Good morning. I'm recording this video in my study in Vero Beach, Florida on New Year's Day. And rather than spend a lot of time thinking about resolutions for the new year, which maybe I'll get around to, I thought I would do a video about an event which happened a couple of days ago. Namely, I traded in my Tesla Model Y for a new Model S. And so you say, why would you make a video about a car? Well, that's a good question. But as you remember, my car, which I had named Snowball, and I took a cross-country trip in August of September of last year. And I guess it's about as close as I will come to an epic adventure. And during that trip, Snowball performed flawlessly. I had no charging problems, no mechanical problems. And so I guess maybe there was a little bonding that took place between Snowball and I on that trip. But you know, when you think about it, your life is measured certainly through your family and your children, but also to some extent through your possessions. You can probably remember all the houses you've ever lived in, all the pets you've ever had, and I think most of us can probably remember all the cars we've had, including our parents' cars. When I turned 16 in Thomasville, Georgia, I was able to get my driver's license. And at the time, my parents had a 1956 Studebaker. This isn't it. I clipped this picture from the internet, but mine was blue. And it was the only car we had, so my mother and my father had to share it. So you can imagine I didn't get a lot of chance to use it. I remember it had a stick shift, as all cars did then. And so I learned to drive a stick shift. I remember I had my first car date in this car. And so even after all these years, I can still remember that car. I didn't have a car when I went to Georgia Tech, but when I graduated, I got a job that paid $605 a month, which was actually a pretty nice premium at that time that most engineering graduates got. So I marched down to the bank and got a car loan, almost 100% financing, and bought this 1957 Chevrolet Impala Super Sport convertible. I think I paid $3,500 for it, and now I was absolutely the cat's meow. I love that car. So looking back over the cars you've owned really is a way of looking back over your life. And I would say during the 15 months or so that I owned Snowball, it was a memorable time. And even though it was in the middle of COVID, it gave me an opportunity to do something that was enjoyable rather than to stay at home. It's amazing to me how many views my videos of that trip received. And I put an index of all those videos in the description below for those of you that would like to see them. I also got a lot of calls from friends, and when I returned, Snowball was a little bit of a celebrity. People knew her name, commented on Snowball when they saw her, and so it was a little bit like having a family pet out with you. So first, a little history on how I came to own Snowball. Ann and I have a summer home in North Carolina mountains, and we typically had driven her car and my car to the mountains and back twice a year. And in 2020, we decided that we would only take one car since we were arriving late that summer because Ann had broken her elbow and because of COVID concerns. And so when we arrived in North Carolina, in her car, I might add, it dawned on me that it was still her car in North Carolina, just as it was in Florida. And if I wanted to use it, I had to make a reservation for it. So we had talked about having a third car that we could leave in North Carolina and just take one car back and forth. And that would give us two cars at both houses. But I was reluctant to do that because something always happens to a car that's been sitting idle for 6 or 7 months. But then I decided, an electric car, not much is going to happen to it. I can just trickle charge it, and I'm sure it'll be just as good when I come back as when I left. So that was why I started off buying a Tesla. I always wanted to buy a Tesla because I'm a little bit of a geek, and I thought the technology was neat. But I didn't have any particular desire to save the planet. I thought that would be helpful, but I just thought it would be fun to drive. So the Model Y was reasonably priced at the time. I paid just under $50,000 for it, and my plan was to leave it in North Carolina. But after it came, within about a week, I said, there's no way that I'm going to leave this car in North Carolina. I'm taking it back to Florida. And so I did, and sold my Mercedes when I came back. But what I always wanted was the Model S, which is a little nicer than the Model Y, has a little more range. But I didn't order it, didn't really consider it, in part because it was a lot more expensive, too much for a car I was simply going to leave in the mountains. And it was pretty obvious it was going to be refreshed so that it would increase the charging speeds, range, and so forth. So when it was announced that Tesla was going to refresh the Model S, I ordered the Model S in early May. Turned out I didn't get delivery until the very end of December. But the economics worked out extremely well because I received as much for Snowball as I paid for as a trade-in. I realized we're in a little bit of a used car bubble, but still that's something I'm never even close to achieving, is selling a car for what I paid for it after 15 months of ownership and 15,000 miles of driving. And in the meantime, I was lucky enough to have an order for the Model S at the initial price, which has subsequently gone up $15,000. So all in all, it was a pretty good trade. Up until my cross-country trip, every trip I'd made in my adult life had been highly scripted with airplane tickets, hotel reservations, etc. But for this trip, every day I woke up with no fixed schedule. I had a general idea of where I wanted to go, but basically I decided that day what I was going to do. I never had one problem charging my car. I stopped at a lot of supercharger stations, and in the process got a chance to talk to a lot of other Tesla owners that were on road trips, and so enjoyed those conversations. It cost a total of $382 in electricity for just under 6,000 miles of traveling. So that was a pretty good price, about 6.5 cents per mile traveled. During our trip last summer, Snowball took me to visit a lot of old friends, many of whom I had not seen in a number of years. We also saw some very interesting places, such as Winslow, Arizona, which was the inspiration for the famous Eagles song, Take It Easy, Sedona, Grand Canyon, the Hoover Dam, Las Vegas. Then I went to South Dakota for the first time, which was my 50th state, to go along with my 7 continents. So I think I've punched most of my bucket list travels. We went to the Crazy Horse Memorial, Mount Rushmore, Zion National Park. We enjoyed getting to know more about the Pony Express service, which preceded the Transcontinental Railroad. We listened to a lot of audiobooks, including this one about the cattle industry in the late 1800s, which at the time was the most valuable industry in the world. And this one by Stephen Ambrose, which was a fascinating story of Custer and Crazy Horse. At a departure party before I left North Carolina, one of my friends gave me this bauble daub of Dr. Fauci, who was instrumental in keeping COVID away from Snowball and I during our trip. Here's Red, one of our cats, saying goodbye to Snowball before we traded her.
I'm here to give a goodbye toast to Snowball. She took good care of my husband for 3 weeks. She was the other woman in my life that took him away from me. So farewell to you, Snowball. Thanks for sending him back just as handsome as ever.
I have to say, Ann was a good sport about my trip. She didn't think it was a good idea for an 80-year-old man to be venturing out on a cross-country trip in the middle of a COVID pandemic. But I did miss her, and I was delighted to see her when I got home. So here's Snowball at the Merritt Island, Florida Tesla Service Center, and she's being traded in for my new Model S. As you can see, the tag, the Wade Hampton tag on the front, has already been transferred. So this is my last picture of Snowball. So here's my new ride, a 2022 Tesla Model S long-range version. As you can see, it has a yoke steering wheel, no stalks. And I've gotten used to the yoke steering wheel, working on the lack of stalks now. It has some interesting features such as auto shift out of park. When you get in the car, it knows what direction you need to go in, so you don't even have to shift it into gear. I tried the launch mode the other day, and it is fast. It is breathtakingly fast. I don't know how many G forces you're pulling when you do that, but the first time I tried it, I actually wimped out and took my foot off the accelerator. And the second time, I managed to keep it up to 60 miles an hour, but it's very fast. 0 to 60, 3.1 seconds, and I can't imagine why you'd want to pay more money for a Tesla Model Plaid, which is even faster. So here's Snowball saying goodbye with the new holiday update from Tesla. Very neat light show.